they say it's open, but it seems to be closed, is because it's Sunday and Monday. I know some of the places are planning on opening just because of this on Monday, even though they're normally not open. But we are respecting what they have to do to go through as local businesses. I'm going to turn it over to Chief Beal next to just give an update. There's not much movement on the investigation this early, but wanted to see if he had any, give him some time for some comments this morning. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mayor. I do have just very brief update. I want to remind you that we are less than 36 hours into this incident and its investigation. Can confirm that if all the magazines that we recovered from the suspect were completely full, and we have not had a chance to examine that. We just know we have magazines with bullets in them, but if all of those were completely at full capacity, including the loose rounds found on the ground near him, as well as in a backpack that he carried, he would have had a maximum of 250 rounds in his possession at the time. We can confirm at least 41 spent shell casings from his weapon based on their location and his path of travel. That's at least 41. Because you could well understand, in a very dynamic and chaotic scene as this was, with people running through the crime scene, with first responders running through the crime scene, with emergency EMS traveling through the crime scene, evidence can be lost. So we can tell you at least 41 spent shell casings from the suspect. As it relates to the officers, we have recovered 45 caliber shell casings, 16.233 caliber shell casings, and 1 shotgun shell casing. In terms of the persons injured, we're getting different information from other sources of persons treated in a hospital. So we have previously said 27. There's some information as 32. I can confirm to you that there is at least 14 of those injured, whether that number is 27 or 32, at least that were injured through gunshot wounds. So many people were injured through other means in their flight from this very chaotic event. There are autopsies currently being completed by the coroner's office, so that is a process that is still undergoing, and it will be some time before the outcome of autopsies, and that's really all I have to share as far as this morning.
Thank you, Chief. Next, I'm going to invite Fire Chief Payne to come forward and speak a little bit about some of the first responders from the fire EMS response.
Good morning, everybody. So at 1:07, Dayton Fire Department received their first dispatch to respond to the Oregon District. We responded with 1 fire crew and 1 medic, which is dispatch protocol for a shooting. Immediately upon arriving on the scene, we realized that we had multiple people down. We upgraded it to a mass casualty incident, which called for additional response personnel and command units. And then it was expanded once again shortly thereafter. Our crews transported five people to the hospital. Be 3 from Medic 14, 1 from Medic 10, and actually Riverside Medic crew transported another. Many of those people that did make it to the hospital self-transported. And so we initiated our mass casualty protocol. We put command units in place. We did our triage and our treatment, and then we facilitated the transfers to the hospitals in a balanced manner so we didn't overload any one hospital. There are 37 total patients treated at the area hospitals, and they resulted from injuries as a result of gunshot wounds, being trampled, and then lacerations from fleeing the scene, broken glass. As you're aware, they had 9 victims plus a shooter were pronounced at the scene. And as of 9 o'clock this morning, we have 11 victims still hospitalized. That's all I have at this time.
Thank you, Chief. Next, I'd like to invite Michelle Lovely to come forward to talk a little bit about what we're doing with the funds for the victims' families and those that have been affected by this incident. Michelle?
We've been approached by community members, companies, individuals, just tons of people wanting to know how they can help and what they can do. And once again, the Dayton community is just such a strong community. Unfortunately, after the tornadoes and now this, just the community shows once again that we're Dayton strong. So we have developed a fund at the Dayton Foundation, and anyone can give to that. It's the Dayton, Oregon District Tragedy Fund, and the fund number is 8365. So you can give right on our website at daytonfoundation.org. You can also just send a check to the Dayton Foundation with that fund listed in the memo line. But we have had a lot of questions about how we're using the funds and how much we've collected, and we are just as anxious as all of you to get our arms around that. But we're less than 24 hours with our fund being open. So we are meeting actually today at noon to talk to, we've been approached by community foundations all across the United States who have unfortunately been through situations like this. So they're providing guidance to us, and we're also consulting with our Council on Foundations to find out how we should appropriately be managing these funds and making sure that they're put out into the community in the best way possible.
Thank you. Okay, I'll now open it for questions.
Can I say, Chief, do you have any greater clarity on the sister and the mutual friend of the gunman, and whether you've talked to the mutual friend yet about that whole situation on the night?
We've had the opportunity to have some conversation. I will say there's just more conversation needed. I will not say at this point we have clarity of the entirety of that relationship.
You talked about how the three of them had separated at some point. Do the other two know when he brought the gun out? I mean, did he get the gun out of that car? Were they all three pulled up originally?
We have no information at this time to suggest that they were aware of the weapons or when they were introduced into this environment. So we have no information at this time.
Were they in the trunk of the vehicle, or did he leave them in another location after they separated to go get it and come back?
Yeah, we don't have that determined with certainty. We do know the shotgun was recovered in the trunk, but exactly how they were transported to the scene has not been clarified.
Chief, as you said, it's been 36 hours.
Pardon?
The condition of the companion?
I believe he's still being treated in the hospital.
What ailment?
He received a gunshot wound to the lower torso.
Chief, as you said, it's only been 36 hours. At this point,
Less than.
Excuse me. How close are you at this point in your mind to establishing a motive?
Not close enough. Not close enough at all. We have a lot of evidence still to go through. Just based on where we're at now, we are not seeing any indication of race being a motive. But we are not through all the evidence. And so until we're through all the evidence, we cannot rule that out. But I'm saying we're not seeing any at this time that suggests race is a motive.
Mayor, Chief, can you, obviously this is your community, if you could, I mean, going to that vigil last night, seeing all those people, I can't imagine the stress that you're under and the pain you feel for this community. Can you talk a little bit about your heart and what you've seen over the last few hours and what you've been dealing with?
Yeah, I think, I've spoken a lot about the grit and the determination of this community, and surely the 8 o'clock vigil was no different. Grieving is a process, and as the chief said, we're probably 35 hours into this process. But I have no doubt that this community and its resilience and its willingness to see through. We've seen through many things in this community, and I know that they'll come together. That we're coming together strong again here. I'm going to let Commissioner Mims and Commissioner Shaw answer this question as well.
It's very interesting. First of all, thank you all for being here. It's very interesting to see such a sea of so many people who had their hearts showing on their sleeves. Those who were concerned about the 9 victims, which I think was uppermost in terms of everyone's mind, thinking about them and thinking about their families. Having some of the ministers say some of the kind of things that they said that help people understand our reasons for being here. Our goal is to provide as much safety as we can for our cities. You know, we escaped 2 major tragedies in terms of a visit from a hate group back a couple months ago, and we were able to escape even the 14 to 15 tornadoes without any loss of life as well. And then for this to come and hit us at such a hard time, and you know, we're all still emotional about this in terms of how we address these issues. And some of you may know that when we start talking about assault weapons, you know, being a Vietnam vet, and I understand clearly the damage that those type of weapons can inflict upon individuals. And they have no place in the hands of average everyday citizens. So we do need to have more work done at the federal and state level to make sure that we minimize these type of situations for the future. Thank you.
Yes, I agree with what the Mayor and Commissioner said. Mayor is right that grieving is a process, and we've had great sadness over the last many hours, but now it's really turning to anger. Anger about the lack of movement on gun control. We are not the first community that's been affected by this gun violence, and we won't be the last, but we have got to do something, and I think we're about to work now of pushing the legislature and the federal government to move on responsible gun control in this community, in this country. So that's what I want to do.
Hey, Chief, I have a question. When he turned the corner and his sister and her friend were, do you think he targeted them, or was it an accident? Was he just spraying indiscriminately?
You know, that's a question I've asked more than once, and I don't think we can know that for certain. It seems to just defy believability he would shoot his own sister, but it's also hard to believe that he didn't recognize that was his sister. So we just don't know.
For talking to the companion, do you have any idea what time they originally got there and why they went that night to begin with?
Josh, I don't have that information available. Pretty much we believe we pieced some of that together. We have a lot of cellular information that we haven't gotten through yet, so we do know there was some communication once they separated. But I don't think we have all those timelines established yet.
Is the companion cooperating?
As best as I know.
Chief, could you tell us, as far as when he was headed towards Nev Peppers at the end, and you talked about, thank goodness that he didn't get inside, the officers stopped him. Do you have any information about an earlier incident in the night that where he may have tried to get in earlier and been denied entry to that bar?
Yeah, there was some information, early on, but I haven't been able to be a part of any conversations to tease that out and to clarify that, but I do know that was some indication of them being denied entrance, but I can't confirm that with certainty.
Who is the owner of the gun?
Spoken to investigators today?
Pardon?
Has the companion spoken to investigators?
Not that I'm aware of.
Is he slated to speak?
Not that I'm aware of. Again, there's a lot of other things that we're working on today, as well as our federal partners, which are expediting the transportation and analysis of digital evidence. So there's a lot more going on behind the scenes here than just following up with various individuals that we need to interview. So there's a lot of parts in motion.
So how much is he?
Anything about the gun being involved in a hit list, making a hit list in high school? Is there anything about that, a rape list?
Yeah, I know there's information out in the media. We're clearly exploring every possible piece of information we have. I'm a little bit reluctant, even if there's such evidence, to interpret it 10 years later as somehow this is indicative of what happened yesterday. So I think I would tell you the mistake that is made, and understand your interest to try to get information out and to help people understand, but by taking pieces of evidence and coming to a conclusion about its significance creates mistakes, large mistakes at times. I've seen it too often in national incidents. Piecemealing information does more to misinform than inform. So we really don't know until we have all the information, all the evidence available.
We'll take one more question.
Chief,
Congress Barry here.
we're wondering, do you know how many were hit by bullets and shrapnel versus trampled? And also, would officers involved be made available for interviews at some point?
Yeah, the officers are still on administrative leave, so they're not going to be available for interviews. And I'm sorry, your first question was?
How many people
we said
were
14 that we could confirm non-fatal have been treated of the 2732, and I think, Jeff, you had a different number even. So clearly, a couple of dozen people who were treated for non-fatal injuries, 14 of which we can confirm were through gunshot wounds.
Okay.
Mayor, have you spoken with the president?
Yeah, I spoke with the president yesterday evening. He called, I think it was around 6:30 before the vigil. Okay, we'll appreciate you all being here. I know you'll be out and about on 5th Street through the community. We're really going to take these as, yesterday we did like an every 3-hour clip. I don't want to keep on calling you in when we don't have anything new, and so the investigation will take longer. It'll take longer periods of time, so you'll hear from us the next time we do have something new to share.
Mayor, can we just have one more question with the chief?
Maybe.
Thank you very much. I do appreciate it.
If I can answer. Go ahead.
That's okay. Chief, can you talk more about the acquisition of that firearm and your thoughts on your citizens owning such large magazines?
It's problematic. It is fundamentally problematic. They have that level of weaponry in a civilian environment, unregulated, is problematic.
And his ability to purchase that online and bring it into your community? What are your thoughts on that?
And modify it to function as a rifle.
And how did he do that, Chief? That was the one thing, you mentioned that
I'm not the expert in it, but I can tell you that